Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. My name is Howard Morris, and I am the chair of the Jewish Square Mile Foundation, about which you know, and I won't tell you now, but you'll certainly be learning a lot more during the day. And welcome to our History Day. We are honoured, and I don't underestimate using that word, honoured by speakers of the highest repute, academic specialists in the history of London, the country's first Jewish community that arrived here shortly after William of Normandy conquered the country and remained here living in the city of London until all Jews were expelled in 1290, a couple of hundred years later. And then there was an interregnum until the return of Jews in the 17th century. And I think I've just seen our good friend Rabbi Shalom Morris of Bevis Marks, which is the oldest operating synagogue and is the synagogue of that community who arrived again in the 17th century. Before I introduce Dr. Dean Irwin, one of our two academic leads, so the academic who has worked with us amateur historians to keep us true to the latest scholarship, I want to make a few remarks. Obviously, I have to make the remark about please mute your telephones. The safety announcement about you will see stewards dressed in blue like me. You'll see people from our secure team who are dressed in high-vis jackets. Please follow their directions. God forbid there's an emergency. There will be somebody from the Barbican who will be assisting in showing you the evacuation routes. There will be breaks, and if you go down to Benugo on the ground floor or the Barbican kitchen, you can get food and drink. There will be water available. So I've spent a great deal of time over the past few years thinking about people I can never meet. And I often find myself wishing, sometimes desperately, that I could spend just one afternoon with a medieval Jew of London. Just one afternoon, sit with them in their home, to walk with them through the streets of the city, to ask them questions no archive can answer. What did your street sound like? What made you laugh? What frightened you? What did you hope your children might become? What did you think this country might offer you? And what did you fear it might one day take away? And all these questions I wrote in this little address, these remarks before recent events, and they seem more acutely relevant now. The difficulty, of course, is that history rarely gives us people in full. What it leaves us are fragments. A grant of land, financial record, an entry in the Arca, the records of the exchequer of the Jews, property disputes, tax records, court documents, references to debts, scattered archaeology, broken shards of pottery, a handful of responsa, and then long silences. So much of what we know about medieval Jews comes from records created not by Jews themselves, but by government, by monarchs, courts, institutions that wish to tax them, regulate them, use them and ultimately expel them. That creates a terrible distortion. It's rather like trying to understand your neighbour by reading their mortgage documents and their parking fines. You would know facts about them, but you would know almost nothing that mattered. You wouldn't know what made them laugh, what frightened them, who they loved, what prayers they whispered for their children, their ambitions, the griefs they carried. And yet they were not abstractions. They were not merely victims. They were not footnotes in royal finance. They were people astonishing like us. And in one sense, they were already carrying an ancient history when they arrived in London. In 1066, they were not a new people. They carried with them nearly 1,000 years of exile, scholarship, memory, and survival following the destruction of Jerusalem and the harrowing of Israel. Perhaps 400,000 people out of a tiny population died of starvation or murder following the suppression of the Jewish revolt. So what were they searching for when they came here, came to London? Security, opportunity, freedom to practice their faith, a future for their children. Probably the same things migrants and minorities have searched for in every age. And that's why this story matters so very much. This isn't simply Jewish history, it's the history of London, it's the history of the city of London, it's the story of migration, of faith, commerce, identity, belonging, contribution, and ultimately exclusion. It's part of the story of how the city became what it is, and for more than 2 centuries, this community helped shape medieval London. They made homes and raised children, they worshipped, they argued. Now, I haven't got a lot of evidence for that, but we know they did. Some prospered, some didn't. And they all struggled in a challenging world lit only by fire. They endured. They lived alongside their neighbours, at times defended this city alongside them. This story belongs to Jews, but it also belongs to everyone, to Londoners, to children, to visitors, to anyone who cares about how great cities are built, and anyone who wants to understand what happens when societies forget the humanity of people in their midst. So it's a story that ends in the cruelty of the expulsion of 1290, but that's not the whole story. And we refuse to allow this community to be remembered, defined, only for how their story ended or for the violence that occurred before then. We're here to recover lives, to restore humanity, and to place this remarkable community back where it belongs in the story of this great city. And perhaps in some small way we become the people who finally say to them, we see you, we remember you, and you belong here. Thank you for listening to me. You won't have to listen to me too much the remainder of the day. You'll hear experts speaking. We'll begin with Dr. Dean Irwin. Now, let me tell you about Dean. He not only volunteered along with Dr. Rory McLellan, who you'll hear from later in the day, as our academic lead, which means we pepper him and Rory constantly with questions on the most tiny matters that occur to us untrained historians. He's a historian of medieval Anglo-Jewry, visiting fellow at the University of Lincoln, and a visiting fellow in Anglo-Jewish medieval history at the Oxford Centre for Hebrew and Jewish Studies. He is currently working on a book, which will be published soon, a study of Jews and Christians as neighbours in the towns of medieval England. And he's going to start with that most important subject, one of those areas where myth-busting needs to go on, because it's been absorbed by Jews as much as by Christians and others. Were all medieval Jews moneylenders? So prepare to be surprised. Dean,